Hey everybody, it's me, the Nitty Gritty Yarn Girl. Welcome to Twisted Stitches 3 o'clock. Wow, it's been a day of days and we're having a great time here at Nitty Gritty Yarn Girl. One of the comments that came out of our last class was someone asking about knitting socks toe up. So of course I got right on the task of knitting socks toe up for a demonstration. But I just want to chat a little bit about socks before I show this. The first time I took a class on knitting socks, this is what happened, and it may have happened to you too. So I got the first sock done, not without some challenges, but I did get that first sock done. And it was done from the cuff. We started from the cuff, and we worked down and created the heel, which I still love is knitting heels, and then down to the toe. So we started with the full amount of stitches, and then decreased to get to once we got to the bottom. Well, that was really great, except that when I finished that sock and I started the next sock, this is where I ended up. And I think it was 2014 when I took that class, and this sock is still on the needles, and we call that second sock syndrome. It happens a lot. Why is that? Well, because by the time we finish the first one, we get a little bit bored. And we don't want to, it's like, oh, I'll do something else for a while and then I'll go back to my socks, but we don't really ever get back to the socks. So what I did was went to a method of knitting 2 socks at a time. And I do that starting from the toe and working up. So I've got a couple of examples to show, but this is the one. These are my most recent toe up socks. Okay, look. I finished them at the same time. They're both exactly the same size, which is the beauty of knitting 2 socks at a time. Both your heels are in the same place. Both your cuffs are the same exact size. The leg is the same. The calf of the sock is the same. And the distance from the toe to the heel is the same on both socks. Why? Because we can measure as we go along. And what's good for one then happens to the other at the same time. So knitting socks 2 at a time is a great benefit, and I'll show you some different sock yarns a little bit later. But when you're doing socks 2 at a time, the one thing you want to remember to do is to wind your skeins first, because you're going to use half the skein for one sock and half the skein for the other. So keep that in mind as you go along. When I knitted this pair of socks, I wasn't sure if I would use a whole skein for the sock, because the weight of the yarn is a little bit more than what I was using in the past. So I've got plenty here to get another pair of socks at least, especially for my tiny foot out of that. Now, I don't know if I was knitting a pair of socks for my husband, I don't know that I'd have enough there, but perhaps we'd give it a shot and see. So let's talk about toe up. If you've knitted socks before, you understand the concept of the cuff, the leg, or the calf, the heel, the foot, and the toe. That's pretty much how we knit a sock. We go from here, and then we go to here, knit the heel, and then we go down to the foot, and then we knit the toe. Toe up is a little bit different, and I love it, because what you're doing is you're starting with the toe of your foot. Let's take a peek at how this looks. Now again, I'm working using a method called Magic Loop. Magic Loop is the best way to knit your socks 2 at a time, because it allows you to knit the front and the back of the sock as though you were working in a circle. So it's like working in the round using 2 needles. Pretty cool concept. So when you're working toe up, what you do is you start by casting on 10 stitches per needle, and then working where you increase every other row until you get to the middle of your pinky toe when you're trying that sock on. So when you're working Magic Loop, what you've got to remember is whatever you do on one side of the sock, you also have to do to the other. So I'm going to now knit the front of my, this is the back of my sock, because I know every time my tail is on my left, I'm starting a new row. So what I'm going to do as I'm going to knit across, because I've already done my increase on the other side. I'm going to knit across my stitches, and I'm going to finish up this row. Now I'm demonstrating one sock at a time because it's easier for you to get the concept of toe up on one sock. If you were at a class, we would be knitting 2 at a time because that's what the class is. So now I'm going to go back. Now my working yarn, my working yarn is on the right. So I'm starting a new row. In this case, I'm going to increase. So with Magic Loop, this is the front of my sock. I'm going to pull the top needle. And now my bottom becomes my top, and I knit into it. So now I'm increasing on this row. So I'm going to knit 1 and then make 1. And then I'm going to knit across to the end of this side of the sock. And then I'm going to increase on that side of the toe. So I increase on the left and then on the right. But what we have to remember is when we're knitting Magic Loop, we're doing the front and the back of the sock. So if this is the front of the sock, I knit to 1 stitch before the end. I make my stitch. Now you can make 1 or you can knit front and back, whatever works for you. And I knit the back stitch. So now I've increased on this side of my sock. I need to turn, and now I've got to work on the back of the sock. So I put all my stitches on this needle, on the bottom needle, and I tug my first stitch really tight so that I don't have any laddering, which creates a little bit of an issue in the beginning. Okay, now this is where I'm going to work. So I've got to pull this back needle out, and I'm going to now start my increase on the back of the sock. So I knit 1. And if you are a new knitter, or a non-knitter, I should say. Whoopsie, there we go. This make 1 may seem a little strange to you. You may not know what that is. But as you keep knitting, it will come to you. Did I just make 1 or did I not make 1? What did I just do? The best laid plans. Here we go. Knit 1. And, okay, cameraman, hold on a minute. I don't know what the heck I did there. All right, I took my, got it. That stitch, I knitted it with the tail instead of with the yarn. You know, that happens sometimes. Okay, here we go. Knit 1. And to make 1, you just go into the bar below the stitch you just knitted, and you knit that one. And then you knit across. So I made 1 on each end of the front of the sock, and now I will make 1 on each end of the back of the sock. Then my next round, I will knit straight. So you have 1 increase round front and back, 1 straight round front and back. And you keep doing that, as I said, until you measure like to the middle of your pinky toe, and you'll say, okay, that's wide enough. And then you will start working the body of your sock with the total number of stitches you will have. So once this is across your toe, take off my shoe, and I would put this on my foot. And as it gets bigger, Let me just get it off the needle here so you can see. See, I measure it on my toes. It needs to get a little bit longer there, but it's almost there for me to start working even. See, I haven't gotten to my pinky toe yet. So you just keep, and that's the beauty of working from the toe up. You can actually measure your sock as you go along. If you're doing them one at a time, then what you do is, once you get that number, I would keep track of my rows. And once you get your the total number of stitches on.
Hold on, technical difficulties.
That's okay. Okay, we're back. I think it looks like we're back anyway.
There we go.
Okay, once you have your total number of stitches on the needle, then I would mark that. I would note how many rows I actually did. So you've got to keep really close touch if you're doing a really close track if you're doing one sock at a time. At the risk of being really tricky, I'm going to show you how to cast on Magic Loop. Now, or how I cast on Magic Loop. There are lots of different methods to do it. And as I said, I use Magic Loop not just for socks, but I use it for hats too. And anything that I need to work in the round where I'm going to be decreasing. Because, when you work a hat, for example, it tells you to work on a certain size needle and then to change to DPNs, double pointed needles, when you can no longer work in the round. Well, why do that if you can use one needle, one circular needle throughout and not have to change needles? Or what you can do is work on two circular needles, but that's a whole different story. So let's talk about casting on and starting socks working with in Magic Loop method. Again, I'm addressing people in this who have already knitted and who may not have done Magic Loop, but understand the concept of the method of Magic Loop. So the mechanics of it can be a little tricky. So I like to start with, I put my slip knot on my needle, and I'm using my short likey interchangeables here so that you can see better. So I put my slip knot on my needle, and you hold your two needles side by side, right? And then you create what's a figure 8, starting on the bottom because you have a loop on the top already. And it's 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6. I'm just going to leave it at that right now because I just want to demonstrate how this works. So we have 6 stitches on the bottom needle and 6 stitches on the top needle. You'll see 7 because this is the knot that we started with, our loop. And we can easily just drop that loop later on. So now I'm going to take my bottom needle because that's where my yarn is, my working yarn. And I'm going to slide it out and make sure that loop is still on the bottom. It comes over the top of that needle like that. There we go. And I am going to, see now I've pulled my needle all the way through so that my wire is holding the stitches that I'm not using. And then I'm going to knit into the loops that are on that top needle. So I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I'm just going to slide this over, and then I'm going to turn my needles facing the right again, slide the stitches that were on the wire to the needle, slide the stitches that were on the needle to the wire, put that down there, and I'm going to start knitting that. So that I knitted, for example, if this is a sock, I'm knitting the front of the sock, and now I'm knitting the back of the sock. And you can see when I'm done with this row, I will show you. This just twisted. I'll go into the back of it and knit it. Now, you see what happened? I actually closed the front and the back to create the toe of the sock, front and back. And then you just keep repeating that process. I'm done here. What I do is I take my needles, I turn them to both face the right. I slide the yarn that was on the wire to the needle. I slide the yarn that was on the needle to the wire, and I start knitting again. This would be the row on my sock that I would start doing my increase. We're just going to keep going straight across here so you can see. So when you are working your socks toe up, or you're working a hat top down, you're going to want a closed piece where you have your front and the back, and you're working to create a closed piece. So you'll have an open center, but the base will be closed. If you're knitting a hat from the bottom up, what you do is cast all your stitches on a needle as if you were casting them on to work in the round, and then you split them. But we're talking about socks right now, so let's not confuse the matter and get into hats. So again, the concept is to move your stitches from the wire to the needle, move your stitches from the needle to the wire, and knit with the working from the bottom. The bottom one is the one you pull, and then you knit. So simply, very simplistically, that's how you use Magic Loop to knit socks 2 at a time. If you are local, Connecticut, when I say local, I mean Connecticut, I do offer toe up socks 2 at a time. And we offer those classes regularly and also on demand. So if there are people who want to learn, we can certainly put a class together for you. There you go. So let's talk about sock yarn and what type of yarn is good to use for socks, because it's really important. If we just pick up any yarn and say it's wool, okay, that's great for socks because it's nice and warm. But if it doesn't have the right fabric content, what you're going to do is you're going to get a sock that's going to stretch out and not have any give, like this one, okay? So what you want to have something is with a little bit of elasticity, whether it's got nylon in it or a little bit of, well, it's mostly nylon that's going to give you some bounce. So let's take a look at some sock yarns that work really well. Actually, the ones that I was using Painted Sky. Now this is that heavier sock that I talked about on the earlier show, if you were there. This is a worsted weight yarn, and I'm really loving how it's working up. And so I really thank the person who said, can you show us how to do toe up socks? I thought I'd do something with a bigger weight, heavier weight, so you could see it a little better. And Painted Sky are these yarns right here. This is a worsted weight wool. And let's take a peek at the fiber content in here. So these are 100% wool, but they've got a lot of spring to them. So you're going to have, and it's a nice wool that you can, it's a super wash, so that it has a lot of durability to it as well. So that's a yarn that I love to use for socks. These are merino. There's merino blends here. Some have cashmere, some have silk, and some are straight merino. And so all these will work very nicely for sock yarns as well. Perth is fabulous for socks. This is a superwash blend. It's 80% wool, 20% nylon. This is a great sock yarn, as well as Gadifra. And this is what I used for the socks that were finished there. This is the KFI. And this is another 100% superwash wool. The superwash wools work really, really good for socks, because they've got nice elasticity in them. That's going to hold the shape nicely in a sock. And that's what you're looking for. So some yarns, when they will the wool will stretch out and it won't spring back. But with a nice superwash wool, you're going to get a nice fit. And it's going to spring back nicely when you wash it. So, socks 101, sort of, maybe 201. Okay, do we have any questions coming in, Paul? Did you see?
Nope, I don't see.
Take a peek and see what we've got. Okay. All right. So, that was our socks. I wanted to just kind of quickly, because that took a lot of our time up, take a look here at this poncho. Because as we go into the spring weather, these nice wools will carry us through. And this is a poncho made with Noro Ito. And again, any of the Noro yarns would work great for it. And what's really pretty about this is the back is all cables. So if you see the back, it's got some really nice design work on it. And there we go. I know what, earlier, on one of the earlier shows, I was talking about Coastline, Jody Long's Coastline. And I mentioned that I wanted to get her the book that I had. This is the sweater I was talking about. This is a great sweater for spring. This is, let me just find that pattern in the book. Here, look at that. So the great little notch out there, just a little design, kind of breaks up the striping there. And so that is made with Coastline. This is on our website. You can find this pattern on the website. You have 218 yards there in each of the each skein. Again, a nice little price point. If you like to create things that are kits, we've got a couple of kits that are pretty timeless here. This one is Queensland United. So, you have the gradient wool, and this is a organic wool and cotton blend. This one is a sport weight, and it works really nicely up in different shawls, and we have some great patterns on our website for that one. And this has been such a great little seller and very popular with actually all different age groups. And this, again, this is a Katia kit. So this has both knit and crochet patterns, and you can see how the patterns are included. They give you a nice little picture there. The crochet pattern is just as lovely. And this is how this one works up. So, and it's really great. Simple. Asymmetrical. You start with whichever color you like and keep working up. So whatever color you start with is going to be, you're going to have the longest piece. And then at the end, because your piece gets as wide as it does, you've got a shorter stripe. So again, really nice for the warm weather coming up. Oh, and these are fun colors. We've got the greens. And then there's the yellows to orange. It looks so pretty against that. And the blues to navy. And I have, I think right here, yeah, the cream or ecru to black. So there's a nice variety there, nice color range to work with. And I believe each skein is each skein is 107 yards. It's a fingering weight yarn, and it's 100% cotton. And the kit is $29.99. So great price point. A quick project when you're sitting home during self-quarantine. I think that's the first time we said that in three sessions today. And we're just about out of time. We're running low on time now. You have 5 minutes? You know, I did show one thing before, one of the Huasco cotton yarns in a crocheted pattern. And this is also, this is really a lovely crocheted pattern. A friend of mine, Lois Arsenault, who does a lot of my crochet samples because she's a crocheter and I am more a knitter. So this is a really puff, I love this little puff stitch that's done on here. And she created this for one of our friendship retreats. And she knitted it using the Ella Rae lace merino. Which, actually, this project reminds me of one of the things that she talked about when she had finished the pattern, finished the knitting. She said, I don't know, it's not as long as it should be. And I said, don't worry about it. When you block it, it will be. She's like, I don't know, it's not going to get that long. And I said, don't worry, Lois, it will be. Blocking is one of the most important pieces to knitting. It's one thing to knit a project. It's something else to finish it. My mom was a sewing machine operator all her working life. And I remember going into the shop and kind of watching what was happening all day long. And I was like the little coffee girl and just watching everybody work so hard. But one of the things that I noticed and took with me was that the production line of the garment, and where each person worked on their own piece. And my mom was a pocket maker, but it would the garment would go from one workstation to the next workstation to the next workstation to the next until it was completely sewn. But then there were two finishing touches. One was the cleaner, the person who would take all those little ends and all the loose threads and clean them off the project, off the skirts that they were sewing, so there was not a thread to be seen. That's in knitting and in crochet. That's your weaving in the ends and making sure that you don't have any loose threads at the end of your project. And from there, it would go. And I remember these people like it was yesterday. It would go from Ruth, who was the cleaner, to Larry, who was the presser, and he would take that finished piece and he would finish it on the pressing machines so that it would lay perfectly and everything was exactly as it should be. Every line and stitch was even and finished perfectly. Take the time to block your projects when they're done, unless of course the project says not to. The origami shawl says not to block it, but most of your projects will say to block it, and they will even give you oftentimes your blocked size as opposed to the finished size without blocking. So take that time, take pride in what you do, and I will tell you that blocking will definitely take your project to the next level of beauty when you're done with it.
Linda Whitsim says, this is so much fun. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Linda, for being on the show with us. And if there are any questions that I can answer for you, please give me a call at 203-856-6755. You can go on to nittygrattyyarngirl.com and take a look at the projects we have. But when you're looking at the projects, remember that every project starts with the yarn. So if you see a yarn that you like, but don't want that project, I'm more than happy to customize something for you. Be sure to share this on your page with your friends and tell them all to join us on our next show at 6 o'clock. And if you'd like me to demonstrate something else then, please send me in your messages and I'll be more than happy to do what I can for you. Thanks. We'll see you at 6.